You ever notice how rich people pay less for almost everything, while broke people somehow pay more? Sounds backwards, right? But that's exactly how the system works. Leo learned this the hard way. One Tuesday morning, he was driving to work with exactly $27 in his bank account when a tiny orange light appeared on his dashboard. Check engine. At first, he ignored it. Because what else was he supposed to do? The mechanic already told him the issue weeks ago. A simple repair, about $400. But Leo didn't have $400. He barely had enough for gas, so he did what millions of people do every day. He hoped the problem would magically disappear. He turned up the music, kept driving, kept praying, and for a while, it worked. Until one rainy night, on the highway, smoke started pouring from under the hood. The car died completely. Tow truck, $250. Hotel for the night because he couldn't get home, $120. Missed shifts at work, another $300 gone. And the repair, not $400 anymore. Now it was $3,200 because the original problem destroyed the engine. One small issue became a financial apocalypse. And this is the moment Leo realized something terrifying. Being broke wasn't just stressful, it was expensive, painfully expensive. And once you see the math behind it, you can never unsee it again. Because nobody tells you this growing up. They tell you poor people are bad with money, lazy, undisciplined, irresponsible. But what if the real problem is that poverty itself creates expensive decisions? What if being broke forces you into traps that rich people never even notice? Because here's the hidden truth. When you don't have money, everything costs more. Your car costs more. Your food costs more. Your housing costs more. Your loans cost more. Even your time costs more. And the craziest part? Most people blame themselves instead of seeing the system that keeps draining them. Leo used to think rich people were simply smarter. Then he started paying attention. His boss made twice his salary, but somehow spent less on everyday life. How? That made no sense. Until Leo discovered something called the poverty premium. And once he understood it, everything clicked. Take something simple. Toilet paper. Yeah, seriously. A wealthy family walks into Costco and buys the giant mega pack for $40. Maybe 60 rolls. Cheap price per roll. Done for months. But Leo? He didn't have an extra $40 sitting around, so every few days he'd stop at the convenience store after work and buy a tiny 4-pack for $6. Over time, he was paying almost triple for the exact same thing, not because he was careless. Because he couldn't afford the bulk option. That's the trap. Rich people buy in bulk. Poor people buy in survival mode. And survival mode is always more expensive. But here's where it gets darker. This doesn't just apply to groceries. It applies to life itself. Leo noticed it with shoes first. Every 6 months, his cheap sneakers would fall apart. The soles ripped. Water leaked in. His feet hurt after long shifts. Meanwhile, one of his coworkers bought a $180 pair of work boots that lasted for years. At first, Leo thought that was insane. Who spends $180 on boots? But then he did the math. Over 5 years, Leo spent more replacing cheap shoes than his coworker spent buying quality ones. That's when he realized poor people often buy things multiple times because they can't afford to buy them once properly. And this principle is everywhere. Cheap furniture, cheap phones, cheap appliances, cheap tires, cheap mattresses. You save money today, only to lose even more tomorrow. And companies know this. That's why entire industries are built around monthly payments. Only $29 a month, just $15 today. Buy now, pay later. Sounds harmless. Until you realize monthly payments make broken people feel temporarily comfortable while quietly keeping them financially trapped forever. Leo learned this after buying a couch on credit. The couch itself cost $900, but after interest, he paid almost $2,000 for a couch. And the craziest part? At the time, it actually felt like a smart decision. Because when you're broke, you stop thinking about total cost. You only think about surviving the month. That's scarcity mindset. And scarcity changes your brain. Researchers found that financial stress can reduce your mental bandwidth dramatically. Not because you're stupid, because your brain is overloaded. Imagine trying to plan your future while your mind keeps screaming, "How am I paying rent? How do I afford groceries? What if my card declines?" That constant anxiety steals your ability to think long-term. And this is where everything changes. Because most financial advice completely ignores psychology. People online love saying things like, "Just budget better, stop buying coffee, wake up at 5 a.m." But that advice sounds ridiculous when someone is drowning financially. A person struggling with money doesn't need motivation quotes. They need breathing room. Because once survival mode kicks in, humans make desperate decisions. Leo understood this after one terrible month. Rent was due, his account was negative, and then his bank hit him with a $35 overdraft fee for being short by $4. Think about how insane that is. He was already broke. So the punishment for being broke was becoming even more broke. That's the system. If you have money, banks reward you. No fees, better rates. Cashback rewards. But if you're struggling, you get punished. Higher interest, overdraft fees, late penalties, predatory loans. It's like the financial world gives discounts to people who least need them and penalties to people already struggling. And nowhere is this more obvious than cars. Leo eventually needed another vehicle after his old one died, but because his credit score was terrible, dealerships treated him like a walking risk. One dealer offered him a car with a 23% interest rate. 23%. The car itself was worth maybe $7,000, but over the loan, he would pay nearly $18,000. And if he missed payments, repossession. Which destroys your credit even more. That's the cycle. Bad credit makes life expensive. Expensive life makes saving impossible. No savings creates emergencies. Emergencies create debt. Debt destroys credit. And around it goes. But the worst part? Time. Nobody talks about the time tax of being broke. Rich people save time constantly. Leo noticed this after visiting his manager's house one weekend. Dishwasher, washer and dryer, reliable car, groceries delivered, everything efficient. Meanwhile, Leo spent hours every week doing things manually. Laundromat trips, bus rides, waiting in lines, fixing broken stuff, searching for the cheapest gas station. His entire life required more effort. And time is energy. Energy affects opportunity. By the end of each week, Leo wasn't just financially exhausted, he was mentally exhausted too. That exhaustion keeps people stuck. Because building wealth requires planning, learning, thinking long-term. But poverty forces your brain into immediate survival. You stop asking, "How do I build wealth?" and start asking, "How do I survive Friday?" That's why being poor feels like drowning. Not because people don't work hard, but because every mistake becomes catastrophic. A wealthy person gets a flat tire? Annoying. Leo gets a flat tire? That could mean missing work, missing rent, overdraft fees, debt, stress, arguments, panic. Same problem, completely different consequences. And suddenly, Leo realized something huge. The real advantage of money isn't luxury, it's protection. Protection from emergencies, protection from stress, protection from desperation. Rich people aren't calm because life is easier. Life becomes easier because they have margin for error. And poor people, they live without margin. One bad week can destroy months of progress. That realization changed the way Leo thought about money forever. He stopped obsessing over getting rich fast, stopped chasing lottery thinking, stopped dreaming about overnight success. Instead, he focused on one thing: stopping the bleeding, because before you build wealth, you have to stop financial leaks. That became his mission. He started looking at every expense differently, not emotionally, strategically. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this monthly payment?" he started asking, "What is the total lifetime cost?" That question changed everything. A cheap pair of shoes wasn't cheap anymore. A high-interest loan wasn't manageable. And fast food stopped feeling convenient once he calculated how much it cost yearly. Leo realized poor decisions are expensive, partly because they repeat forever. But smart decisions compound too. One emergency fund prevents future debt. One reliable car prevents future disasters. One paid-off credit card prevents years of interest. And this is the shift most people never make. They think wealth is about earning more. But often, wealth starts with losing less. Avoiding penalties. Avoiding traps. Avoiding financial landmines. That's why the first $1,000 Leo saved changed his life more than any paycheck ever did. Because for the first time, life stopped feeling like a constant emergency. When his tire blew out later that year, he paid for it calmly. No panic. No payday loan. No overdraft. No credit card debt spiral. Just solved. That tiny emergency fund gave him something he hadn't felt in years. Control. And control creates confidence. Confidence creates better decisions. Better decisions create momentum. That's how people slowly escape the trap. Not through magic, not through crypto jackpots, not through motivational speeches, through breathing room, through small strategic wins, through eliminating the poverty premium one piece at a time. But here's the catch. The system wants you distracted. It wants you chasing status instead of stability. That's why broke people are constantly marketed luxury. Designer clothes, fancy cars, new phones, because looking rich is profitable. Actually becoming financially secure? That takes patience, discipline, and invisible choices nobody applauds. Nobody claps when you build an emergency fund. Nobody celebrates when you pay off debt. Nobody notices when you skip impulse purchases. But those invisible decisions quietly change your entire future. Leo finally understood something powerful. Financial freedom isn't about impressing strangers. It's about reducing fear, reducing stress, reducing the number of things that can destroy your life overnight. That's real wealth. Being able to breathe, being able to sleep peacefully, being able to handle problems without financial panic. And maybe the biggest lie society tells us is that poor people are poor because they make bad choices. Sometimes bad choices exist because people are poor. There's a difference. Once Leo understood that, he stopped hating himself for struggling and started attacking the system strategically instead. He learned how banks made money from desperation, how companies profited from subscriptions people forgot about, how lenders targeted financially stressed people. And instead of feeling shame, he felt awareness. Because awareness changes the game. Once you understand the trap, you stop walking blindly into it. You stop financing things you don't need. You stop worshiping appearances. You stop confusing consumption with success. And slowly, you start buying your freedom back. One smart decision at a time. One avoided fee at a time. One emergency saved at a time. That's the real math of being broke. It's not just about income, it's about penalties, stress, interest, time, mental bandwidth, and invisible costs most people never calculate. But once you do, you realize escaping poverty isn't only about making more money, it's about stopping the system from taking so much away from you in the first place. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. The goal isn't to look wealthy, the goal is to become unbreakable. Because once you become financially unbreakable, everything changes. If this video opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because millions of people think they're failing financially, when they're actually trapped in a system designed to make struggling expensive. And if you want more videos exposing the hidden psychology of money, wealth, and financial freedom, subscribe now.